Here's a supplementary video just to walk you through a couple of things. So, a couple of questions that have kind of come up that I think we might also cover in the Collaborate office hours. If anyone has questions, we can talk there too as well. But wanted to walk you through just a couple of things about the week 8 solution, and then talk a little bit about the week 9 solution. This is where I'm getting some questions back. Thought it would be good to share. So, first of all, for the week 8 solution. The big thing about reading from the file. So reading into a data file, that's pretty simple. That's what you see right here. Reading in a table from a CSV. It doesn't really matter what you use for the text file. That will create a data frame. Now I can test it by using the class function, and the class function, and then the head will just show you the top of the data frame. So if I just go ahead and run this real quick. Down here in the results frame, you can see it says data frame. So simply doing a read table like this is going to create a data frame. That's the first question that you had to answer. Now, what threw a couple of students off on the second question right here is it said that you had to use the CPU performance. And so some students didn't go and actually look through that. They just tried blasting in the link and then expecting it to work. Where really machine learning databases is a whole subdirectory of different things that are in there. So from that, if you go to CPU performance, that's the subdirectory underneath that shows the CPU performance information. There'll be two files in there. There'll be a header file and there'll be a data file. So machine data is the actual file name, the data file name, and then there's also a header file, machine names, that's out there. So if you just take the names that are out in the machine names and you put that into a concatenated string such as this, then you can use the column names to apply those back into the header, and then that gets you the right ones. So let me go ahead and clean the deck down here and show you here. Here is the URL you should have used. Here's the file name. And here I'm going to create that header. These are the file names that I got out of the machine names. So then, if I run it into a function like this, I'll feed it in the URL, the file name, and the header here. Actually, that should be temp URL. Actually, no, I'm good. Hang on. Okay, so the parameter of a URL right here, I'm going to go ahead and feed it in. I'm going to paste those all together and then turn around and just run a read CSV on that. Now I'm going to say header equals false. I want to ditch the header if there's any data that's inside of that file, and using string as factors false too as well. That's the parameters that I'm using here, because I'm going to apply the header based off of that machine names file that I saw also in that directory, and then simply returning that data frame back out. Run the function to build it, and then here to test it out. I'm going to use temp header, temp URL, and temp file. And then let's just run ahead of the top records inside the file. Here you can see, here are the data frame, it's loaded. Here is ERP. So that's really the key one. So then the last question is, got to create a function to determine CPU performance. Well, the key on this is you got to get this sorted, okay? So you can sort that using the sort techniques which we've seen before. Easiest way, and the way that many students have solved this with, is with deployer. So if I load the deployer library right here, and then if I'm just going to run ahead here, and inside the head, I'm going to go ahead and do an arrange. I'm going to return the first 10 rows using that head command. I'm going to do an arrange on the file. This is the file we just loaded. And I'm going to do it descending order on ERP. So if I do that, here's the one that has the highest ERP, for instance. So then you just simply have to create a wrapper function around that. So coming into that, if they say a specific vendor, then you can tell whether that vendor is the highest on the score. You match up to the vendor name right here. You can tell what is the highest score. You can do the max. Any of the other questions which are included here, you can write those out very quickly right here. And I will include a copy of this code back out for you too as well, just so you can see this. Now, again, I've kind of solved this using a much more elaborate function right here. Your function could be a little bit more simplified. The core piece here is being able to do this sort, and this is the easiest way to do the sort. So I wanted to key you in on that. Okay, next thing, for week 9. So week 9, you're going to use the PDF tools library, and from the PDF tools library, you're going to read sample data. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick. Oops, I need to get a path in here. Hold on. I think I have sample data in that. I do not have sample data in that. Hang on. There. Now I've loaded sample data. And it can be any PDF file, just to show you the example of this one right here. The key is we want to be able to use grep and various incarnations of grep. So if you've never used regular expressions, you've never used things like that, then just by doing $grep, you'll see here it gives you all the descriptions of what different kinds of greps that you've got. It also gives you some of the patterns that you use. It gives you some examples. There's countless things available out there for you to kind of use different ways. So here's some examples of how you can use grep too as well. So let's just say right here, if I'm going to do a simple grep, let's say. So right here, it's going to return the character vector, for instance. This is a simple grep. Now, if I do grep L, standing for logical vector, if I do a grep expr, it's going to give you the place where the expression, everywhere the word analysis is used. And if you use reg exec, it's going to return the first instance or a -1 if nothing is found. So if I'll run these individually for you right here, I believe this will work. And then we look at A. Very first position in that sample file that I have has the word analysis in it. Let's go ahead and run B. So this says true or false, is the word analysis in there? And the logical in this one, yes, analysis is in there. We know it's in the first position. Now let's run C. Oops. Here I'm just creating some sample data for you right here to see it in this. And then if I chose C, it shows all the positions. And then if I choose D, first position. Now, one other thing I'll put out there is if you want to extract a string, you can use the substr to do that. And so if I'm extracting like the title, for instance, out of that, this is how I can extract a title out of that. Now, for the final part, you're going to basically insert your central limit theorem printout. And then we're going to use the PDF tools in a different way. We're going to use it to write out a PDF file. So in that previous example where you created the 4 graphs, you're going to still create the 4 graphs. But if you put it inside of a for next loop, just like you do here, and then in this case here, I used a file name using a string print function. And the string print function, because it's in the I right here, it's going to increment it. So right there, first time through, it's going to be central 1. Second time, it's going to be central 2. Third time, it's going to be central 3. Because we're using a PDF right here and we're using a device off right here, it's going to write a separate file for each graph. So each graph will be its own. It'll give you 5 graphs is basically what it does right here. Now, the only other piece that I've added in here just for a little bit of flash is if it is not the last iteration, if it's not the 5th iteration, just run the base curve. So that's the show curve equals false. Otherwise, the last one, I do want it to show the curve. So much as the example I've given you before, where it's running the individual graphs, the last graph has the normal curve on it. So this is how you could produce 5 different PDFs, but in those 5 PDFs, it'll have the curve on the last one. So I think this will probably be enough to get you started on it. If you're having some problems, please reach out. I'll be happy to leave both of these 2 scripts out there with the announcement, so you should see those 2 as well. If you have additional questions, just hit me up or come to office hours. Appreciate it. Have a good week.